Well, welcome back to the morning show here on Arise News. It's time now for the week that was. Let's take a look at the top stories that made headlines across the globe this week. And we're starting with President Bola Tinubu, who's marking his 73rd birthday today he marked it yesterday, rather, with prayers for national peace and stability, even though his birthday is actually today. Now, speaking after a special Juma service at the National Mosque in Abuja ahead of Saturday's celebrations, Tinubu vowed to keep working for the welfare of Nigerians. Nigeria's Adesua Morowan, our State House correspondent, has more.
A day before his 73rd birthday, President Bola Tinubu arrives at the National Mosque. No balloons, no cake, just a serious dose of supplication. Friday prayers are routine, but today they take on a symbolic meaning. The president marking another year with faith and reflection. Seated among the congregation, Vice President Kashim Shettima, National Security Advisor Nuhu Ribadu, the Deputy Senate President, service chiefs, top government officials, and members of the First Family. They take their places as the prayers begin, seeking divine guidance for a nation grappling with economic and security concerns. Clerics leading the special session offer prayers for national peace, security, and the president's leadership. They praise the First Family's Ramadan outreach, urging continued support for the vulnerable.
We pray to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to strengthen you, to be with you, to protect you against any evils. We pray to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I, on behalf of my esteemed colleagues, imams of this national mosque, imams of nation of Nigeria, we are all with our fervent prayer, supplicating to Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to elongate your life, to put more barakah in your life, to help you, to assist you in piloting the affairs of this country.
Speaking after the prayers, Tinubu expresses gratitude to God for life and leadership.
Feel good, feel happy, and give thanks to Almighty Allah that has protected us so far and continue to answer our prayers, accept our ibadah. That is key and very important to all of us. A prayer for our country to stabilize, keep in peace, and safeguard our people, all the citizens.
With his administration nearing its second anniversary, the president insists that prayers and perseverance must go hand in hand.
The word for all of this is hard work. You work harder, you pray harder. And that's the inspiration that I got from all of this.
But forget policy for a second, because while the president was talking governance, the First Lady was crafting a love note, a rare glimpse into the softer side of the presidency, as Senator Oluremi Tinubu publicly reaffirms her admiration for her husband. A part of the message reads, "I celebrate your courage, strength, and resilience that have all contributed to who we both are today. Happy birthday, Mr. President, my knight in shining armor." End quote. So as President Tinubu enters another year of leadership, he has got prayers, policy, and a presidential love note. Adesua Morowan, Arise News.
Well, it is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu's birthday. Do you have any birthday wishes for the president?
Absolutely. Congratulations, happy birthday, happy 73rd birthday to the president of the most powerful country in Africa, the most powerful black nation in the world, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. Of course, happy birthday to him. You know that the first thing that I noticed from the video clip is how robust, shall I say, you know, or healthier maybe, that the president is looking, given the all the issues around his health, you know, particularly when he clocks 70 in the heat of the electioneering. This is his second birthday in office. He will have two more in his first term. if he gets another time, he will have many more birthdays to celebrate. So I think that, congratulations, are in order. In times past, on a day like this, we will be witnessing the Bola Tinubu colloquium, which was an integral part of celebrating Bola Ahmed Tinubu's birthday. But it looks to me like that brilliant idea has been relegated now that the president, has made it to the highest office in the land. I hope that those who were part and parcel of that initiative, even if they are now serving in different capacities in government, will not jettison that idea, because it does not in any way, in my personal opinion, conflict with the fact that the president, is sitting in office. The Bola Tinubu colloquium, for close to 10 years, if not more, has been an integral part of his birthday, and I hope that it will continue. But of course, the love note from the First Lady, beautiful, given that this gentleman, the president, was born in the month that women have been celebrated. I love the fact that she brought a bit of poetry and love and everything into it, and also given the fact that the president's mother was a major influential woman, in her days. I think that what many people would therefore be expecting from the president is that the issues here and there that concern women in Nigeria, in politics, in business, in media, everywhere, if he has the time and the inclination, he should also try and, take a look at it, because he was born in a month that women have been celebrated. Congratulations, Asiwaju Bola Ahmed Tinubu, President, Federal Republic of Nigeria.
Absolutely. Like you rightly said, congratulations to the president. I think birthdays are always worth celebrating. They're an absolute blessing. And just like he rightly said, praying for national stability, we join him in praying that all will be well in Nigeria. Of course, this is a man who has, been in power at several stages, from the Senate to being a governor to now becoming the president. So he definitely understands the crafts, of leadership, what goes into being a successful leader, what it requires. And I'm hoping that as the president celebrates his 73rd birthday, it would also be an introspective look into what really does Nigeria need, and what exactly are the issues that we're dealing with today, and how can he, as president, cement his legacy to ensure that there are certain issues such as our democracy, our rule of law, separation of powers, that could live on after him, to say he was one of the instrumental people in ensuring that these issues are dealt with as they are currently plaguing us as a nation. Speaking to this, the success or failure of democracy in Africa took center stage at the 60th birthday colloquium. This was for former governor of Imo State, Emeka Ihedioha. Now, this was an interesting event, if you ask me, that where we saw former president and elder statesman Olusegun Obasanjo speak to several issues plaguing us as not just a country, but a continent. This was also for the deputy speaker. He was also a deputy speaker at some point in time. And I think what he said was quite instrumental, because he spoke extensively about democracy. And he said that democracy, in his words, has failed in Africa. Now, a lot of people had different opinions to this, because we saw presidential candidate for Labour Party, Peter Obi, on that stage. I believe Tambawa was on that stage as well. Yes, definitely. And
he was.
And the former,
I think there was meant to be
Atiku Abubakar was
clip
also there.
that would have helped this discussion if
Absolutely.
the producers are
if
there,
the
so
producers
that they can,
have that. So yes, they were all on that panel, and they spoke extensively to what the elder statesman had to say. Let's take a look at that story.
At the colloquium, which gathered Nigerians from all walks of life to celebrate Emeka Ihedioha, a former governor of Imo State from 2019 to 2020, former President Olusegun Obasanjo explained that the theme of the event, "Is Democracy Failing in Africa?" was a testament to Ihedioha's patriotism. Obasanjo cited Abraham Lincoln's famous description of democracy as government of the people, by the people and for the people. Obasanjo lamented that corruption and other societal issues have undermined this ideal in Africa.
Government of the people, of small number of people. by a small number of people over large number of people. Now that is not democracy that will endure. So if you are talking of democracy failing in Africa, democracy in Africa has failed. And why has it failed? Because it didn't have any in context and in content. It's not African.
The guest speaker, Catholic Bishop of Sokoto Diocese, Matthew Hassan Kuka, also voiced concerns about the state of democracy in Africa. He sarcastically noted that democracy works for different people, but often at the expense of others.
When a government becomes destructive to the principles that have been initiated, it is the right of the people to alter and to abolish it and to institute a new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing powers in such form.
Former Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Emeka Anyoko, also weighed in, blaming the nature of the Nigerian politics and the conduct of its politicians for the challenges facing the nation's democracy. He accused politicians of using political power to further personal interests instead of serving the public good.
It's only through stable democratic governance which would facilitate indigenous creativity and manufacturing that will, both in Nigeria and in African countries, be able to rid our continent of internal conflicts and lack of substantial socioeconomic development.
The colloquium also featured a panel discussion on whether democracy is working in Nigeria. Former governors Aminu Waziri Tambuwal and Peter Obi, along with former presidential spokesperson Olusegun Adeniyi, offered different perspectives on the current state of democracy in the country.
So I would like to say that it has more to do with the operators of a democratic system at a given time. If they play by the rules and they follow due process, democracy works. If they do otherwise, of course, it will be failure.
Like they started in 1999, laid the foundation. Some people came and took it to a decking, and some people were trying to raise it to first floor, and some people came and knocked everything down. That's the situation where we are now.
I agree to an extent with what His Excellency said. It's a work in progress. But I also agree with what His Excellency Kidobi said, because there are also challenges that we can see within our own environment. But we have to look at both sides.
In his remarks, Emeka Ihedioha reaffirmed his dedication to defending and protecting democracy in Nigeria.
And I want to assure you that I remain whom I am. I'll be unfazed. I will remain your friend. I will remain consistent. I will remain supportive and protective of our institution. May God bless all of you. For me and democracy, it is still God do us apart.
While acknowledging that no democracy is perfect, the event underscored the belief that Africans must take action to create a democratic system that reflects their unique cultural and social context. The goal is to make African democracies as enviable and effective as those in the West.
Well, of course, as we just saw in that video, a lot of people had thoughts with regards to what the president, the former president, said about democracy in Africa. And, you know, I would say he has said the same thing at different points in time in different ways. But the fact is, he still maintains that democracy has failed. Now, at the point he is in his career, he's looked through the issues that we have had. And I would say that, to be honest, it's very easy, with all due respect, to hold a mirror up and say, you know, these are the issues that we have now, when at some point in time, you also had the capacity and the power to fix some of the issues that we see today. Because the issues that are in this presidency
the previous presidency were not devoid of those same issues with regards to electoral integrity, for instance, issues around the separation of powers, the rule of law, the over-concentration of power in the executive, for instance. These are issues that we've talked about time and time again. So when we hear of these issues, I think we need to move away from highlighting the fact that these are the problems that we have to, okay, how can we resolve these issues? What can be done? Because if you think about it, who are the people that will salvage the situation? It's the people in power today, which takes me back to the president celebrating his 73rd birthday, to say, okay, by the time we're done having all these conversations and highlighting all these issues, what is unique to us as a country? Let's not talk about Africa, because every single country is different. What is unique to us as a country in Nigeria? What are our peculiar issues? For instance, the weaponization of poverty is an issue that will continue to affect true democracy, because what are people's priorities? A very popular phrase would be stomach infrastructure, being one of the most important things when it comes to politics in Nigeria. So we need to look at the issues that are peculiar to us in order for us to know what we really need. And then comes that issue of the constitutional review, because as long as that constitution remains, it will continually be an issue to say government is truly by the people, for the people, by the people, and of the people.
Yeah. I mean, we're undergoing constitutional review now, you know, in terms of electoral processes, like, for example, maybe having all elections on one day, which I personally think is a bad idea, but it's a suggestion. You know, the age limit, separation of powers, having state police, having affirmative action for women. These are all bills that have passed second reading in the House of Representatives. So we are undergoing constitutional review. But beyond that, you know, some people will say that this coming from President Olusegun Obasanjo, a lot of people don't want to hear these words from him because when he was president, there were so many Senate presidents that it's sometimes hard to keep track of how many Senate presidents were served under him, because it seemed that the executive had exerted control over the legislative arm of government. At the same time, the same state of emergencies where we saw governors being suspended did occur under President Olusegun Obasanjo. I believe 2 governors, one in Plateau State and one in APC. Yes, those were completely different situations, but it's worth noting that this is not the first time that we've seen situations like this. However, what he is saying is very important. He said that the state of democracy in Nigeria is in a dire situation. And I believe, and I agree with you, is that we have at all stages in time in our democracy not upheld these institutions, not strengthened them. If President Olusegun Obasanjo, when he was president, chose to strengthen the separation of powers, chose to strengthen the pillars of democracy, I do believe that we might have seen a different Nigeria today. It doesn't make what he's saying wrong, but it is worth it to bring it up that, you know, there was the term palapa that he said he didn't, you know, push forward himself, but did cause severe disarray in terms of the structure of the National Assembly and their strength. We have had issues in terms of the strength of the judiciary as an independent arm of government, and that started a long time ago. However, what we are seeing today is a cause for concern. When we have so many cross-carpeting to the APC, the ruling party, in the National Assembly, when we have governors who are saying maybe they're not independent, the National House of Representatives has rescinded, but there was a bill to say that perhaps the vice president and governors and their deputies should be stripped of immunity while in office. Some people believe that's politically motivated. So when you have people running to the APC, when you have a military administrator in Rivers State, we are seeing things today that show that our democracy is in a critical, you know, situation. But again, when people say, oh, democracy has failed, I don't believe if we only conclude it in that way, we don't give ourselves allowance for growth and for progress. Because if we say democracy has failed, what is coming next? What alternative system of government are we proposing? What way do we actually get to a better finish line? Because has democracy failed if we haven't truly imbibed democracy? If there's no local government, true local government, if we don't have a true federation, can we say it has failed if we haven't truly tried it properly?
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Adesua. For me, just a few words. First, to congratulate Emeka Ihedioha, you know, who had the platform to celebrate his 60th, where the former president spoke. And I acknowledge the fact that as an elder statesman, former President Obasanjo has always, you know, put his heart in the ring when it comes to matters of Nigeria. You can't say that, you don't know where he stands on issues. His voice is always loud and clear. But the former president needs to be reminded that he's just a former president and an elder statesman. He does not own Nigeria. And this idea of appearing to be grandstanding at every opportunity just to be seen to be wading in on national issues should be moderated. We listened to former President Goodluck Jonathan the other time, who had to come up quite reluctantly, to offer his thoughts on what our country is going through at the moment. And he did, make reference to how ideally former presidents are meant to be circumspect, are not meant to be hard at every point in time. He made references to the US, to every other party, even though we acknowledge that people like Obama, given his savviness on social media and during political things, will always say one or two things. But ideally, former presidents ought not to be the cheerleaders when it comes to criticizing the system or people who succeeded them. At what point did Obasanjo realize that democracy has failed in Africa? Isn't it rather sweeping, hasty generalization to say, flippant even, to just conclude that democracy has failed in Africa? Does this have to do with this idea?
In Africa or in Nigeria?
It says in Africa.
It says in Africa.
Because
democracy has failed in
I do think
Africa.
sometimes that we extrapolate our problems and we take it to other places.
And we think that it's a global or continental thing.
We need to look at what's going on in Namibia. There are actually countries in Africa that are showing us the way to move forward.
Absolutely.
When it comes to their economic numbers, when it comes to the women in leadership, there's so many bright spots.
I cannot agree anymore with you, but when we say stuffs like this, what are the yachts? What are the parameters? Did he fail when he was the president? Just like you have outlined, didn't we see all the things that he tried to do very clearly on democratic things under his watch, including trying to get a third term through the back door, including a sitting governor, not just the other two that were removed, a sitting governor that was abducted under his watch, his intervention in Oyo State politics and the removal of the governor, Ladoja, different things that happened under him that were clearly undemocratic. So when you come on national stage and say democracy has failed, has it failed in America, where we are witnessing what Trump, is doing and going through? Has it failed in the UK, where we've had 7 prime ministers in how many years?
My concern then, who then has the capacity to speak on these issues? Because if you remember, just a couple of weekends ago, we were speaking about how Atiku Abubakar, Peter Obi, they were all speaking about the issue in Rivers and talking about how when it was their turn as well, they also have had situations where they could have done better. So everyone at some point could have done better. So if everyone has made a mistake and then now highlights the same mistake in other people, who in our political class has the capacity or the right to speak?
Including President Obasanjo, but we're saying that take it easy on Nigeria. You don't own this entity. I get the point that he wants the idea of Afro-democracy, or what did he call it? To falter. But when you were there, would you have allowed Afro-democracy instead of you being president of Nigeria? But that's Obasanjo for you. All right, we move on. There was momentary rowdiness in the Senate after a motion seeking to immortalize former chairman of the National Electoral Commission, Humphrey Nwosu, for his role in the annulled 1993 presidential June 12 election was rejected. Our rights correspondent, Omo Bazuaye, tells us more.
The tranquility of the Senate was momentarily disturbed at Wednesday's plenary as lawmakers in separate clusters engaged in shouting bouts. Troubles started after the Senate flatly rejected a point of order by Senator Einaya Abaribe for a motion to immortalize the former chairman of the National Electoral Commission, Humphrey Nwosu. Abaribe had come under double-edged points of order 41 and 51, calling the Senate's attention to what he considers as a matter of urgent public importance. To Abaribe and mostly other senators from the Southeast, Nwosu was the architect of June 12 and as such deserves a national recognition.
Aware that the courageous defense of democratic electoral process during the 1993 presidential election led to the famous June 12 slogan, which ultimately confirmed Alhaji MKO Abiola as the winner.
Abaribe's motion was, however, nipped in the bud following a counter from Senate Leader Opeyemi Bamidele.
Shall ensure that copies of the motion are available for all senators when approval to move the motion is granted. This...
Mr. President, they are all available. They are all there with them. We brought it. We don't have a motion.
Well,
From that moment on, Abaribe's motion looked dead on arrival, even as the nays eventually had the day after the voice vote.
It's a bit controversial. Some see him as someone who truncated June 12. Some see him as a hero of June 12. So it's up to you. We'll put the question. Those in favor that this motion should go through, please say aye. Those against, say nay. The nays have it.
But Abaribe didn't give up without a fight. He quickly returned on Order 42 that permits him to come on personal explanation, and Order 1B, with both attempts hitting the brick wall yet again.
By the fact that a senator wants to make a personal explanation, you must give that senator a chance to make that personal explanation. We are not under a dictatorship, Mr. President. That is why I'm using 1B to come.
If you had told me there's no way I would have stopped it, there's a process. If you have told us that you are going to bring this motion under 42, we will oblige you.
Mr. President, I don't know what is controversial for immortalizing Humphrey Nwosu.
Moments after, a senator representing Abia South had to pack his bags and walked out of the Senate in what seemed a lone protest, even as plenary continued. Omo Bazwai, Arise News.
Interesting 2 days on the floor of the Senate.
There's so many interesting 2 days. Interesting every day out of the Senate has been absolutely fascinating. The Red Chamber is hot.
Busy.
Yes. The Red Chamber is hot.
They're very, very busy.
You know, last Saturday that we had
Yes.
Colin Sugu, you know, the spokesperson of the Akai Kenga, you know, who came here to, you know, talk to us about the need to celebrate, you know, what was his name again?
Professor Humphrey
Nwosu, you know, given the fact that he will be interred, I believe, today, you know, and part of what they were moving for, which I believe informed Senator Inaya Abaribe's, you know, motion, is to consider naming INEC headquarters after Professor Humphrey Nwosu. I'm not sure the sort of politics, in quotes, that Senator Abaribe played behind or failed to play before bringing that up. Because I would to the floor, you know, because I mean that sometimes you need to play your politics right before bringing it on. Even ideas that that's what I'm saying, that the politics that he either played or didn't play well. Who ordinarily will be thinking that Professor Humphrey Nwosu shouldn't be honored or celebrated? Maybe the best thing to do might not be to name INEC headquarters after him. I'm saying I don't see anything wrong with it, but then you might want to argue that how many people are we going to name INEC headquarters or any other institution after if it turns out that we get our politics and elections right?
Yes.
But the reasons that were adduced on the floor by senators that, you know, you otherwise respect, things, you know, borderline ethnic, if you know what I mean.
I don't think, you know, because sometimes it does come across as ethnic, and I want to be slightly fair here, because I think a lot of times when people consider something to be ethnic, we also have to understand that people lived through this, and people suffered personal losses, and some people, you know, and it does come across ethnic lines, because that's how a lot of these historical experiences have been. If you were in the Southeast, you might have experienced this. If you're in the Southwest, you might have experienced that. But it's a personal experience. But when it's
like the one that Senator Yayi.
Yes, yes, the Senator Yayi, right? When his brother, right? But when you personalize these experiences, sometimes they then become tribal when they're brought to this level.
Which is precisely my point. And that, what has that got to do with Professor Humphrey Nwosu? If there will be angst on that, it will be to the man who annulled the election, not the man who failed, in quote, to announce it in the face of the gun.
Which has been, so the bone of contention as well has now been his failure to announce, his failure to withstand the heat.
Have done otherwise.
Of course.
I listened to Oshemole saying, if you had done blah, 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 so that you will now be celebrating him because the military could have killed him.
That's why I'm saying that I think with this situation and a lot of the things we've talked about today, it's just reeks of hypocrisy with regards to how things are being handled. Because we're saying, oh, I was able to withstand the pressure and I was arrested and I was almost going to be killed. And, why couldn't he take the heat? Why couldn't he take the pressure and do the right thing? But at the end of the day, he did to an extent.
When they personalize all these things, many journalists, you remember that we mentioned it even last week, many journalists who today are saying, and across all the states of the Federation, many journalists, myself included, who are saying today that gentleman deserves some form of immortalization. You can debate what you do in his memory. Many of such people were also on the streets. On June 12, 1993, I was on the street as a young reporter with The Guardian, and it wasn't his fault. You could argue that he could have defied the military. But the man who won the election ultimately defied the military, but we saw what happened.
And even just bringing it down to just lay terms, there are people who have been immortalized for doing far less. And there are people who have equally been immortalized and equally been have been a part of issues that we are still trying to resolve till today. So when I look at, there isn't too much politics around this or too much debate or too much reasoning into naming the INEC office after this man. It's not a big deal. The question now is, why is this such an issue? I think that's what the question is. Why is it such an issue?
I mean, beyond that, because we have to move to the next story now, but the one thing I would want to say is, why the INEC office? There's so many.
That's why I said that can be
instrumental to his role. I think instrumental.
I think there are many honorable places. I would not want the INEC office to be named after anybody building or anybody specifically.
Frankly.
But let's move on to our next.
It's a personal thing. It's a personal thing.
So for me, my last word would be that the motion might not have succeeded on the floor, but the need to honor that man shouldn't die with the fact that he will be interred today. There are other, subnationals, cultural organizations, for example,
the conversation has been
that can honor him, and I think that history has honored him already. So what's the point?
Let's go on to our next story. A very, very sad story here, because public outrage seems to be on the rise following the death of Adetunji Okpayele, the co-founder and chief technical officer of Bumper, who died on the 4th of March following an accident along Ozumba-Mbadiwe Road here in Lagos. Today, the public is demanding justice for him in a petition on change.org signed by more than 13,000 people. The petitioners demand proof that Biola Adams Odutayo, the woman who allegedly knocked him down while taking a one-way route in the night, is still in Lagos State. They also want her charged with manslaughter rather than reckless driving. Now, according to this petition, Okpayele, who had the right of way, had just left the iFitness gym in Victoria Island and was riding along Ozumba-Mbadiwe at 10:20 p.m. when Biola Adams Odutayo, driving a vehicle, appeared on the expressway without considering oncoming traffic, crashing into him. Now, these are allegations according to this petition on change.org. This is a very, very, very sad day. It's a huge tragedy because this young man was giving so much to Nigeria with Bumper. And I think beyond that, we need to think about this, because I know there has been a lot of accusations online, and we can't yet know what has happened unless a proper investigation is carried out by the police. But one thing that is important to say here is that there is no A&E in Lagos. There is no accident and emergency services provided by the government in Lagos. And I think there might be, personnel...
Accident and emergency services?
Yes.
There is.
Where?
Just by the toll gate. Coming from Ibadan
a hospital,
to your right.
An A&E hospital?
Fantastic one, actually.
Well, I think getting there might be the issue, because from the stories we've heard with regards to this situation.
I didn't even know it existed, and because I've had to call, ambulance services for people, and they haven't gotten there on time.
I have had cause to use it once, and when I did, part of what I discovered was that it was so effective that 40 to 60% of those who were using it, in most cases, were coming from outside. Accidents happen, they bring them there.
What do you mean from outside?
Outside of the Lagos.
Okay, guys, let's go back to bumper.
No, this is relevant.
What I'm saying is that if an accident happens, for example, in Ugiri, or on your way to Benin, people tend to, I witnessed it personally, say, let's go to the Lagos State Emergency Hospital.
Then I don't think he could have made it there.
No. He could have if there's an ambulance that can take him there. If there's knowledge about this place.
Exactly. So I think that's where the issue lies, in the communication and in the because the thing is, you've mentioned it's. Where did you say it is?
Near the toll gates.
By the toll gates.
Which one of the toll gates?
On your way to Ibadan, by 7-Up.
Okay,
not
great,
far from 7-Up.
Now, the thing is, this accident happened according to reports, happened in phase 1, basically, that phase 1 roundabout. That's very close to the toll gate where the protest happened. That was where this incident took place. And the second issue here is response to the accident as at the time that it happened was very, very slow, because he was hit by a car. So I think it still boils down to the police doing the necessary investigation, because I think the reason why this petition exists is because the family believe that they are not paying enough attention to this situation to ensure that justice is meted out at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So
I think it was the attitude of the
woman in question.
But this is alleged, because
exactly,
again, this accident happened at night. She's a woman, and there's a crowd around her car. We can't say.
We really can't say.
We really can't say. But also, just because they did allege that 2 hospitals rejected him, we don't know if they rejected him or they tried to refer him elsewhere. But I think this is why I'm talking about the A&E services, because for an accident like this to happen, where the street lights are not on Zumba, by the way, do people have knowledge about emergency healthcare services?
I agree with you that there's a lot that needs to be communicated about what is obtainable in Lagos State.
Yes, definitely.
Fantastic stuff that people are not aware of. I think that's
but you would look at a person like this man with the work that he has done, especially with regards to the tech and health insurance. How
employing thousands of Nigerians,
you would expect value. That he has built it. Probably would have the people in his immediate environment would know about these things.
But you don't know. But somebody hits you. It's not the people who know you who are going to take you somewhere.
We don't even know if he had his phone on him for them to call somebody else.
I think our point should be that the man should not die in vain, and that the authorities should do their best possible to give him justice.
They must. It's